Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and this is Regular Guy Training. So today we're actually going to go ahead and talk about stock placement in the shoulder because I got a bunch of questions on various formats about what exactly I do, like with my stock per the last video that I did about recoil control. And the thing is that we see this a lot in class. So let's go ahead and talk about this really quick. When it comes to where you place the stock in your shoulder, and this is also relative to like plates and stuff like that too. Um, you do want it kind of deep in the shoulders. I got a couple of comments saying, dude, it looks like you're absolutely on top of the rifle, which is kind of awkward for me. And I'm going to say that this is a little awkward. It is a little awkward, and it's some stuff that you should probably get used to. So, when we talk about this kind of stuff, and yes, I'm still the person that uses 2 point to 1 point convertible slings. Uh, I recognize a personal utility in keeping my sling out of the way when I need to, and then if I have to, I can go to 2 point, or if I have to drag stuff, people or whatever, or grab something, I can just get this out of the way. Yeah, it's gonna dangle and head back here. I just put up with it. It was never that big of a problem to me. So let's talk about where stuff ends up and how it ends up when we sit here and try using our stocks. Now, the first thing that I'm going to say is your length of pull is actually kind of a big deal here, especially if you have a collapsible stock or brace or whatever it is that you're using. So let's talk about that length of pull first, and then we'll talk about stock placement in the shoulder. The best way that I figured out to do this actually comes from Travis Haley or Haley Strategic or whatever. I saw this, God, I forget where exactly and how long ago, but it was a great way for me to figure out a lot of different stuff as far as where my stock needs to be, because that changes up to me personally depending on how much crap is on my gun. So a really good way to figure this out is just max out your stock all the way. Some guys use their stocks maxed out all the way because this works for them, and I'm not even really going to, down those people. So we max our stock out all the way. We get set as if we're getting ready to do some shooting and that kind of stuff. And the second that we're set, we simply drop one hand out of the way. And once we start dropping one hand out of the way, there's a couple of things that we're trying to pay attention to. Number one is what happens to the top edge of this stock. Okay, if it starts to droop forward, that's my first real indication that this particular length of pull is not exactly a great idea. Another thing is that you want to pay attention to how much tension goes into the wrist, especially in these fingers and that kind of stuff, because if they're holding up all of it, it feels like, and you feel an immediate amount of tension that's flexing that wrist forward, you're probably not at a great length of pull. So that's here for me personally. The second I let go here, the top edge of that stock tries to move. So the second that it starts trying to move on me, okay, I recognize that that's not a great place to go. So from there, I'll bring it in one. Once I bring it in one, I'm going to let go again. There's a little bit less of this trying to lift out of that pocket, but there's still some. So we drop again. Once we drop again, we're going to let go, and we're going to see if there's an improvement on whether or not this tries to nose forward and the stock tries to pick up and out of the shoulder. For me personally, right here is pretty good because this right here, this format is basically tailored for a suppressor. So I'm prepared for the RC2 that's going to be out here, and I prepare for the extra weight. So at this particular length of pull, that adjusts really well based off of what it is that I'm using. And in this particular case, there's a can on the end of this gun, nosing it down a little bit further. So in here, I notice that once I let go, it's not trying to escape, it's not trying to run away, but you will notice that if you hang enough crap off the front end of your gun, it's still going to try and go nose forward a little bit. All that really matters is it doing it more than before or less? Right, so then I'm going to go in an extra one. So when I go in an extra one, okay, once we start getting too short, we start to notice that there's a lot of extra tension, especially up in this area. You notice that this portion of your hand is doing more of the holding up on the rifle, and the rest of your arm is trying to dip below to compensate, okay, because you don't have enough connection points, and this all in here is all that's supporting that rifle. So then we go in all the way, and once we're in all the way, it's all in here. And that stock thing that I was talking about where it's trying to droop upward is really present. That's too short, right? So whether or not you want to start shorter or longer is sort of irrelevant, but you start from the min or the max on the collapsible, and you just kind of go from there. So once we figure out our length of pull, which is pretty easy to do, oh, and by the way, that's one of the main reasons why I really like the brace that's on the Draco. The reason for that is that seems to be, especially for the nose heaviness attributes that AKs tend to have, I like that particular length of pull. You know, the way that the brace is set up, it's short enough to where I can compensate for the nose heaviness. So here's the thing: when a lot of people line up, you know, for a shot, they'll bring the gun all the way up to their eyes, and you notice there's a big gap here. This is especially prevalent when I'm watching troops do this with, like, you know, their IOTVs or their plate carriers or whatever. You see this big, huge gap between this and the top edge of their carrier or their shoulders or whatever. It's just kind of hovering in place over the top. Now, if we pay attention to the physics of what really is going on here, these moving components are going to go straight into this buffer tube. These moving components going into this buffer tube, if there's nothing behind that, it's going to try and pop up over the top. Now, granted, yeah, it's, you know, it's 5.56 or 223 or whatever it is that you're shooting, and it's mild, right? But the problem is that if we're trying to get into the guns, get them as flat shooting as possible, keep things as consistent as possible so we can really run the crap out of them, that turns itself into a problem the higher you go as far as skill level. You start noticing that there is basically a plateau that you can't quite get over as far as speed and taking in the information that you need and keeping yourself consistent as far as what goes on as far as, you know, your shot groups and everything else when you're trying to really speed up. And you notice a lot of stringing, and there's a lot of just random crap happening in there. So a way to really deal with that is to put more human behind the whole stock, right? So when we're set up, a lot of people see, like me, like really just kind of like pushed into it, right? And they notice a little bit of a turtling effect, which is why a lot of guys really like the taller mounts now, because they can get a little bit higher as far as their posture is concerned. It's a little less uncomfortable, especially if you're just doing movements, you know, in and out of buildings, especially in training. Holy shit. Like, you start doing enough, like, inside a building stuff, and it's already kind of taxing on the lower back, and it does get worse if you really have to hunch over. But the idea here is, you know, you set your stock good and deep in that pocket of that shoulder and simply raise your shoulders up, okay, more or less turtling, right? So instead of trying to crane your neck all the way down and get onto that sighting system, and you notice that you're still kind of craning in space and you're really inconsistent as far as getting on stock and all that crap, all we're really doing at this point is we're just bringing the shoulders up. So if we're bringing the shoulders up, there isn't any crazy craning that I got to do. Obviously, yeah, I'm turning just a little bit, sort of meaning it, you know, like 1/3 of the way with my head, and the rest of the way goes up with the shoulders because I can't do all the work here. But the point is, though, is that once I'm here, what's great about this is that when we're set and we're doing this kind of shit, okay, we can set a lot of low ready positions like that to where part of the low ready is bringing up the shoulders and whatnot. So I'm down here, I'm really low, right? And now that I have to get some stuff in there, as far as some shooting goes, I can bring the shoulders up, and there we go. You know, as long as your digits are out of the way of your glass and all that other junk, you should be good. So that really does help. And if you go back to the recoil control video that I did before, those other techniques as far as, you know, maintaining your balance and figuring out where the grip strength is, actually going, as well as good stock placement, that's really going to aid in a lot of different stuff that you're trying to do. It's going to keep the gun significantly flatter. It's going to keep things significantly more consistent. But there's one more thing I got to add, because guys that run around with plate carriers, IOTVs, whatever it is, right? You notice that that's significantly more difficult to do because of the cut of the plate, the weaving that's over the top of the plate. It's smoother in here. So stuff is trying to move around a lot, which actually is the reason for a lot of these rubbery textures on a lot of these AR stocks, is so that they can grip a little bit better on those. And that does help, but it doesn't get it done all the way. A lot of people will notice, especially when they see me shoot ARs in particular, left-handed in class, which was my posture most of the time. I have sort of a natural cant in here. And the reason for that natural cant is because I'm used to using this with plates. And I just kind of adopted that posture into, how I mess with rifles and that kind of stuff. Whether or not, I've got a set of plates on, there's that cant that's in there. And it's sort of just kind of been adopted as like a thing that I do, right? Because it's pretty consistent between when I'm shooting slick like so or when I start throwing plates on and that kind of junk. With the right-handed stuff, I kind of got used to doing that as well. It took some time, obviously, but I noticed that there is a little bit of that cant back in there, and that's pretty natural for me. Now, it does two things. Number one, it changes your close range hold over a little bit because of straight up and down. Now I got to rotate where my hold is a little bit over. So is that a big deal? No, but it is something that you do have to track. That's number one. Number two, once we are canted just a little bit, this actually does a couple of things for us. Number one, it moves more with the curvature of the plate. Now, I know that there are other plates out there that are better cut for guys to just be straight up and down, and that's cool, but that's not everybody, right? And that's not even really the majority. So guys that are running around with, shooter's cut plates, which are cut a little bit better, and they're a little more, comfortable to use. They're not like swimmer's cut plates where you can get that whole range of motion in with the arms, and more or less sitting up straight up and down is really just not a problem at all, right? So most of the time, even guys that have those plates are used to canting just a little bit, and you'll catch them doing like Horses of Fire where they really got to run hard as far as the guns go. They still adopt that cant. So clearly it does change up things a little bit. So it adjusts your hold a little bit, and I would also be the guy that says it changes the impulse very slightly. So is that a bad thing? Not really, because you're rotating the gun in more towards where more meat is, okay? If you have a gun that's ejecting back here instead of, 3 o'clocker over there, you might notice some brass coming closer to you, especially if you're in a balled up spot. As far as working a piece of cover or whatever, but is that really a big deal? I don't think so. So this posture right here actually does help with a lot of other things too, because especially guys that are right-handed, you'll notice that if you're using D-balls or mauls or freaking some sort of laser, you'll notice that all of that junk is high right of where your stuff is. So if you have this properly zeroed, okay, and you adopt that little bit of a cant, it does actually help significantly with the hold on that, because now it's a straight up and down hold that more people are used to versus having to understand that your point of aim is over here and your impact is going to be down here. So if we rotate that whole thing over, your point of aim is here and your point of impact is right over the top. To the point where whether or not we're accounting for plates, a lot of guys, especially if they start running around with visible and IR lasers, will just rotate that guy over to where that holdover is very, very manageable, very easy, and then their optics, they have a little bit of that rotation when they're using them. So it accounts for your plates, it accounts for your D-ball, or your maul, or your PEG 15, or whatever, and it keeps things just a little bit easier across the board once you have that particular cant that's in there. I personally am not going to just straight up tell every single person ever, hey, adopt the cant, right? But if it fits the particular lifestyle that you're leading, where if you did go and buy night vision, or you have a D-ball first and you didn't get the night vision yet, so you're using the friggin' the daylight laser for or the visible laser for home defense stuff, because a lot of people use those techniques for that, because it helps you get a little bit higher of a posture. You're not sucked into the gun super hard, but we can stay up here. For me, I'm keeping contact with the top edge of like an LMT stock or a B5 or whatever, and then I'm shooting a laser like so, to where I have a higher posture and I'm not turtled as hard, but I have a pretty consistent reference to where if I have to rotate to the optics or just sink in for the optics, I can do that. So while I'm not going to sit there and be like, everybody should have a cant, for those that have plates, that have, D-balls and similar stuff to it, I would personally recommend that if you're running into a little bit of a consistency issue as far as point of aim, point of impact stuff, as far as where the plates go in relation to the stock and all that, or just flip that, where the stock goes in relation to the plates and all that, that might be something you want to try. So me personally, I've been running a cant on my guns forever, and some of you, now that I've said that, you can start flipping through my videos and you notice, oh wow, that cant really is there. So that's just something that I've done for a little while. I hope this helps out. I'm trying to roll out little snippets of stuff here and there to help guys out, especially because I'm a personal believer in going to get yourself trained as much as you can, right? Big thing revolving around like classes and that kind of stuff too. But who says that you can't get some of the big stuff out of the way, so where when you go to class, you can get that real focused coaching from that person that you're going to learn from, versus these big, huge things that can slow down your development while you're there paying for that information. See what I'm saying? So, that's all I have on this. If you want to come out and train with us, you absolutely can. There's a bunch of stuff out there on the course on the calendar for where it is that we're going to go train people, including Florida, Georgia. We're coming here this month for a vehicle class. It's down zero range in Adairville, Kentucky. We're coming back here to this range in September. So there's a lot of different places that we're going to go. I'm trying to figure out what's going on as far as various other places, and I sort of have to chill a little bit on where I'm placing certain classes because military fiscal year starts in October, so I haven't gotten a new schedule yet. That is what it is. But that said, if you guys want to check this out, if you want to check us out on Facebook, if you want to support us on Patreon, links for all this are in the description below. If you want to get something out of the Patreon thing, $41 a month allows you to come out and train with us as much as you want, as long as you are signed up to that. So that is what it is. But all that being said, guys, remember, a regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy.